I'm just going to ask you one question which I've been waiting to ask and know, because
Yeah.
you have been coaching people on EQ and their personality traits and how they can become a best version of themselves or a better version of themselves for
Yeah.
the last 2 decades. And I mean, globally with leading brands and all of that. What kind of impact the leaders were able to make in their organizations or within themselves when they were aware of this emotional quotient part, and they learn to navigate how they can take it to their advantage.
Great
If you can
question.
share with me.
So the usual leaders that approach me are the ones in trouble. In fact, I like trouble. I like trouble not because I'm passionate about trouble in the negative sense. I'm
Okay.
passionate about getting people out of trouble, because I know what trouble means. I was always in trouble before, and I quite enjoyed it. I love the ecstatic moments where I get on a high whenever things are, I wouldn't say trouble, but fun, right? Fun, but again, with excitement comes risk. So it was a different kind of fun. But so when leaders are in trouble, it allows my mind to think about what can I collaboratively do with them. So a lot of times, I use, not a lot of times, in fact, every single time I use different tools, right? Our two tools, our Enneagram, we use that for the awareness bit about the self. What are your very I wouldn't say predetermined, but our innate preferences, right? So we use the Enneagram, then of course we use the EQCP.
Yeah.
And the EQCP is a measurement of our EQ competencies.
Yes.
Now, what's also important is then using the 180 degree, because then they're getting feedback from other people. So in short, yeah, that's our process. But for people to know what other people are saying about them, and if it's frequently said or frequently said enough, then I think it becomes a pattern people need to focus on, right? Because if they choose to ignore data which people are sharing and not just one person, because if it's one person, then it could be very subjective. But if a group of people are saying the same thing, I think one should take notice. Now, when this information is brought forth to them, a lot of them are like, in short, they are a little lost, right? They get a little lost. When they're lost, more so because it becomes a shock to them. And what I do is I help them to look into it deeper, as in dig into those areas which they have not dug in before, right? And then notice the consequences, notice the causes, notice the potential about what will happen if they continue doing these behaviors. So if they see the consequences and they dislike it sufficiently, then it's about what kind of strategies do they have to minimize it, right? So I help them minimize it if they notice that's not going to be useful in their life or their leadership. And I think it's worked out really well, because sometimes people can recognize it, but they don't know what to do with it. And much of the info is happening internally. So many great leaders know what to do outside, but they got no clue what to do inside to manage the consequences of what happens as a result of their doing and their thinking.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's what the coaching is, just how to manage the inside and how to tweak the inside such that the words they say, the behaviors that they demonstrate are quite different from the ones they're actually demonstrating right now.
Well, wonderful. I mean, how they can manage themselves inside. That's the most important thing. I mean, in the EQ or in terms of dealing with other people and in terms of building things. And one question, that last question today that I want to ask you is, you've also been coaching high performers. In fact, I've always been intrigued, and I've also guided towards that particular thing now, which is the peak performance or the high performance. And you've been coaching high performers, and how EQ is important for high performers.
So that's so interesting. We always think high performers are very good in the hard skills area. So when we think about hard skills area, we look at knowledge, we look at strategy, we look at know-how, we look at all the various competencies that help people be a lot better. So for example, if you are someone who can sell well, right? So you could be very persuasive, could be very convincing, because you know your product really well. Those could be the hard areas. But the softer areas are all those other bits which allow people, which make you attractive to others, right? Okay. So I think high performers have a good balance of both, right? They know how to balance between the hard and the soft. And so that's one. And of course, our other profiles help people to see what are their real gifts. So they know what their real gifts are, and they know what their limitations are. Then they just have to minimize some of those limitations and maximize those gifts. Whereas, by the way, those are high performers. For the lower performers, is a different story altogether, right? They have to obviously make quite a few different strides in very particular areas. But if you look at high performance, it's about noticing some of those critical limitations which sometimes they choose to ignore.
Okay.
If they carry on ignoring that, then what happens is they may have some very deep blind spots, which could be the fundamental reasons why they're not at the stage where they need to be. So just highlighting that sometimes can give big breakthroughs, because it's like getting from step 8 to step 10, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a little bit, but all you need is that little bit to give you that breakthrough.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. And one thing, the last thing that today is if you can give one simple tip for the viewers in terms of being aware of their emotions and navigating it, how would you do that? I mean,
Yeah, that's not an easy one to learn straight away, but I always talk about imploding professionally. So when I say imploding professionally, of course, when one is upset, they can explode. And so they think, and the excuse they usually give is, sorry, that's my temperament, that's my personality, I just needed to let it out. Once I let it all out, everything will be okay. But what they don't probably realize is that when they get into the habit of letting it out when they want to, then it's very hard to stop that flow whenever it emerges again. So I always share with people how they can learn to implode progressively, and that is allow that explosion to happen inside, but not like an explosion, but learn to manage it when they realize it's coming. So just noticing some of the signs inside allows you to recognize that, oh boy, I think I'm going to explode. But that preparation reduces the impact. So when you prepare for the potential explosion, it becomes a mini implosion rather than a huge explosion. Wow. So it's just a preparation for what may happen allows one to manage it much better.
Thank you so very much. I couldn't have, viewers, we couldn't have asked anything more than this. What a word that to describe that, an implosion inside rather than an explosion outside. Because it's been always EQ, meaning talking to others, yelling at others, or being good with others, nice to others. That's exactly what comes to us. But then the most important thing that we need to be taking care is you. That is the person, who's going to be there. And because one of my mentors always taught me this: the most number of time that I spend in my whole life is with myself.
Right, that's true.
So it's important to take care of that. I mean, so that's
You're always with yourself.
Thank you so
right?
very much.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Yeah.
Most welcome, Nag Star. Oops, you're most welcome, Naga.
Yeah, thank you.
And you asked some great questions, and I hope this session will be useful to our listeners. And I look forward to our next session again.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so very much for taking your time in your busy schedule and letting me to schedule this. And we're definitely going to be reaching out to viewers as and when it is possible with the nuggets of wisdom from Dr. Granville D'Souza. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you again.
Yeah, thank you.